This is a public service announcement for the Mother of All Talkshows, presented by George Galloway.
The most factual top cat.
Welcome to the Mother of All Talkshows, Unleashed. Unleashed from state regulation, unleashed from billionaire private proprietors, unleashed from capitalist messages, bound in future only by the ties of good taste, of truthfulness, and of course an absolute opposition to hate speech of any kind, as indeed I always have been. I will discuss, of course, at some length how we got here, but for those of you who've been watching me on a Friday night for years and who secretly had been hoping for a Friday night off, let me get to the money shot right away. The Mother of All Talkshows will be back globally on multiple platforms. And here's how you will be able to watch, listen, and participate in the Mother of All Talkshows Unleashed. We are moving to RT Sputnik Radio. We will be on FM radio throughout the United States of America in a very exciting political period in the United States, the primaries and then the presidential elections. We'll be on Sputnik.com, which can be, of course, received in high quality everywhere around the world. And, God willing, we'll also be broadcasting the shows live on my YouTube channel. We'll be streaming the shows. Though, I want to make this point, it will be a radio show on TV, not a TV show on radio, because a 3-hour show deserves to be on radio. It's something I have learned in now a couple of decades nearly working in the media, that a radio show and a TV show are two importantly different things. So, I hope the show will be starting on Sunday the 15th of June at 7 p.m. One or two technical issues still to be resolved. If that changes, of course, I will inform you. But at this stage, put into your diary 7 p.m. Sunday the 15th of June. Of course, American viewers and listeners will have to adjust that, as will others in different time zones. And I'm expecting this truly to be a worldwide show, because if one thing has emerged over this last few years, it's that people who either think like me or are interested in hearing the thinking of people like me and people like you who've been texting, emailing, and tweeting the Mother of All Talkshows, interested in what we are thinking and what we are saying, is absolutely global. And I intend to build upon that. How did I get here? Well, there's a number of things I have to say, and I'm going to start with the positive. I spent the best part of 15 years working for TalkSport and then Talk Radio, and for the most part, overwhelmingly, I was very happy to do so. I have still some friends, some of whom might even yet contact me to say how sorry they are that I lost my job on Talk Radio. I still have friends in that building, and I want to say to them that on a personal level, I thank you for everything that you did with me over the last nearly 15 years, and I wish you personally no ill will. The problem is that the radio station was bought by Rupert Murdoch's News UK. Again, I have to be honest, because I'm an honest person. I think you know that. I think that's why you're watching this. The News UK management never interfered with my radio show. Everyone thought they would. Everyone thought Rupert Murdoch would take one look at the schedule of the radio station that he just bought and sack me, but he didn't. Everyone thought that Rebecca Brooks, his chief operator in London, would take one look at my name on the schedule and sack me, but she didn't. Which was, I think, to her credit, especially as I'd taken a very large sum of money from her because she hacked my telephone some years ago, or at least those working for her did. But she didn't sack me, and Murdoch didn't sack me, and neither she nor Murdoch ever interfered with what I said. And that's important to know because there are villains in this piece, but the number one villain is not talk radio. The number one villain is the state regulator Ofcom, stuffed full of political appointees, representatives of the prevailing orthodoxy. And here's what happened. I challenged the prevailing orthodoxy trenchantly, as did many of my callers, texters, emailers and tweeters, over the Skripal affair. I said the Skripal affair doesn't add up. And I put on guests like the Honourable Craig Murray, the former British ambassador to Uzbekistan, Neil Clark, the celebrated journalist, John Pilger. I put people on who raised questions about the state narrative on the Skripal affair. And just like that, Ofcom moved into operation because, of course, it is precisely because the state narrative on the Skripal story is so threadbare, they cannot bear to have anyone with a mass audience over which they have any authority and control to learn a different narrative or to hear questions about the prevailing narrative. So the minute that Ofcom began investigating my show, of course, this was a shark in the water for talk radio because Ofcom has the power to actually literally switch them off and certainly has the power to fine them very substantially in a condign punishment that would discourage them from ever allowing such a thing to happen again. And so, when this was quickly followed up by another Ofcom investigation, this time into my rejection of the prevailing narrative that Jeremy Corbyn was an anti-Semite and that the Labour Party was stuffed full of frothing at the mouth anti-Semites, I opposed that because I also knew that that was untrue. I've known Corbyn for 40 years and I knew the Labour Party for the 36 years I was in it, and every year since that I have been observing it. So on these two counts, Skripal, Corbyn, Ofcom's wheels began to turn. And of course, talk radio understandably got nervous. They put the show into special measures, and it became impossible for me to discuss Russia, to discuss the Skripals, to discuss anti-Semitism, to discuss Israel-Palestine on the radio. Not because Murdoch told me I couldn't, but because the danger to the radio station, to the show, to myself, was such that one does, as Francis Bacon put it peerlessly, begin to self-censor. Self-censorship, said Francis Bacon, is the arrow that flies in the night. You don't see it, but it's just as deadly as overt censorship. And so I was suddenly, for the first time in my broadcasting career, not able to talk about things that were raging in the news, that the listeners wanted to talk about, that the listeners were even writing in, demanding to know my point of view on them. If you're a regular listener to the Mother of All Talkshows, you already know all of this. And so we come to last weekend, which ironically was my first and last broadcast from the News UK headquarters, the gleaming spire beside the Shard, looking over the Thames, looking over the City of London. I only got to broadcast there once. But I did broadcast there on Friday night, and this is important because I want to be clear that if I had harbored anti-Semitic views, if I had been an anti-Semite, talk radio would never have employed me for the last 15 years. They would not have allowed me access to their microphone for well over 1,000 hours in that period. News UK would not have allowed me to broadcast on their radio station when they bought it. News UK would not have given me a brand new pass, used only once, going cheap on eBay, to enter the Gleaming Tower at News UK Towers. They would not have given me this brand new pass, access to this brand new studio, if they had believed I was an anti-Semite. And so when I broadcast my last show on talk radio, clearly I was not an anti-Semite. So when did I become one? Because according to a statement from talk radio, I have been dismissed from my show for anti-Semitic views. So what was the proximate cause of this? Well, it was a single tweet late at night on a Saturday at the end of the Champions League final. Now, let me start again with the positive. Do I wish I hadn't tweeted it? Of course I do. Do I regret tweeting it? Of course I do. Do I regret tacking an important, as it turned out, political statement on the end of a tweet about football congratulating Liverpool? Of course I do. Only a fool has no regrets, and even my enemies know I'm no fool. Do I regret upsetting Tottenham Hotspur as a team, as a football team? I do, as a matter of fact, and with great irony. There are many ironies in this story. I actually love Tottenham Hotspur. I love their team, and have many times said so on social media. In fact, I've loved their team since the 1960s. Bill Brown, Dave Mackay, the late and great John White, Alan Gilzean, Steve Archibald. And then there's the Argentines, Ardiles, Ricky Villa. I've loved Tottenham for decades. As a matter of fact, the penultimate tweet that I made about Tottenham Hotspur ended with the words, "Glory, glory, Tottenham Hotspur," on the occasion of their famous victory over Ajax of Amsterdam. So I'm sorry I upset Tottenham. I'm sorry I upset decent fans of Tottenham Hotspur, some of whom are friends, comrades of mine, many of whom have written to me. I'm sorry to any decent person that didn't like what I had to say. But I'm not sorry for calling out the Israel flag, which is all that I did. No Israel flags on the cup. As a statement of fact, this is a statement of the bleeding obvious. Is it about Jews? Absolutely not. I have not a scintilla, a fibre of anti-Semitic feeling or any other racist feeling in my body. And luckily, I have on the record decades of proof of that. Decades of anti-racist work. Decades of work against anti-Semitism. Decades of work demanding that Holocaust denial should put you in jail in Britain, as it does in other parts of the continent. Decades of closing down anti-Semites, Nazis, fascists of all kinds. I've got all that in my locker. I don't need to labour the point. It's just that some people either affect not to know these things or are genuinely ignorant of them. So the Israel flag has nothing to do with Judaism or Jews. The Israel flag is a flag of a state. A state is a political construct. If you hated the Soviet flag, it didn't mean you hated Russians. If you hate the flag of the Communist Party of China, it doesn't mean you hate Chinese people. If you hated the flag of apartheid South Africa, it didn't mean that you hated white people, or Christian people, or people of Dutch descent, or people from the English-speaking communities of the Cape. It just meant that you hated the apartheid state whose flag it was. And that's where I am. I call out the Israel flag everywhere I see it. I call it out when Tommy Robinson's EDL are carrying it down the street. I call it out when the Ulster loyalists are flying it beside the Confederate flag and flags of the Ku Klux Klan and all the other savagery with which they are associated. I call it out when it's waved at Ibrox Park, the stadium of Glasgow Rangers. And I call it out when it's waved at White Hart Lane. And I call it out when it's waved in front of hundreds of millions of viewers of the Champions League final. So I was angry when I saw these flags in the match, and I kind of wanted to make that point. Why do I hate the Israel flag? I hate it because it's an apartheid flag, no more, no less. I opposed apartheid during the best years of my life. I even gave some of my blood from my nose for it. And I've given, metaphorically speaking and literally, some of my blood from my head for my stand with the Palestinian people. And I will always stand there, no matter what they do to me. And after me, whatever I've ever said, done, written will live on. And whomsoever I've inspired to support the Palestinian people will continue the work that I have done. So that's how I got here. Without a hearing, without even being asked if it was me that sent that tweet. It was, of course, but how were they to know that? It could have been a hand dodges spoof for all they knew. Without even the opportunity to explain what I had meant by this tweet, by telephone call, I was sacked. And this matter, unless it is resolved privately, will be resolved legally, because at the very least they owe me the wages they haven't paid me for the last 2.5 months. Amazing. Big multinational corporation actually stopped paying me 2.5 months ago. What could that possibly have signaled? Well, maybe we know, maybe we don't, maybe it's all entirely a coincidence. But as one door closes, another one opens. And the door that has now opened on Radio Sputnik, on FM throughout the United States, online throughout the world, streamed on my YouTube channel, is a pretty big door. It's a much, much bigger door than talk radio, whose audiences, except on a Friday night between 7 and 10 p.m, are not that great, without giving away any company secrets. Although I might give them away, I'm not bound not to. But the audience figures are disappointing, not because talk radio doesn't have some good presenters, but because no money has been spent properly resourcing the station. I don't know, maybe Mr. Murdoch intends to close it down. Watch this space on that one. So this new door, these new doors that have opened, will allow me to speak absolutely unleashed. And let me do some of that now. The by-election last night in Peterborough was a sensational result. Not because a 600 Labour majority in a Labour-held seat is, on the facts, a great result, but because in all the circumstances that Labour even came second, third, is something of a miracle. They say that the bumblebee cannot fly. It's too heavy, its wings are too thin. Aerodynamically, it can't fly, but of course it does. And that's what Jeremy Corbyn keeps on doing. He did it in the general election in 2017. He's just done it again in the Peterborough by-election. What do I mean? Well, first of all, the Labour MP has just gone to prison for dishonesty. That would be a pretty bad start to any party's by-election campaign. Secondly, the Labour Party is not ferrets fighting in a sack. It's all-out fratricidal war inside the Labour Party. Not a day, in fact, scarcely an hour goes by without somebody new being accused of anti-Semitism. The Brexit issue has cleaved Labour right down the middle. Well, not quite the middle, actually, but it has cleaved through Labour on whether or not to go with the feelings of the voters in their heartlands. In the great majority, nearly two-thirds of Labour-held constituencies, or to follow the instincts of the metropolitan espresso macchiato drinking, university-educated, also liberal, identity politics crowd that appear to proliferate in some sections, many sections of the Labour Party, in momentum, inside the bubble, which influences so much of our political discourse. Not only that, the Labour candidate herself in Peterborough was unmasked, don't you know, as yet another anti-Semite, just a few days before the poll, and Labour MPs and grandees had begun denouncing her before polling day, and she still won. And actually, although 600 is a very low majority, it's an increased majority on what the last Labour MP for Peterborough got in 2017, just before she went to prison. It's a remarkable result for Jeremy Corbyn, not least because the bookmakers, the media, the analysts, and I include myself in that, had written off the Labour Party in Peterborough. I was absolutely certain that the Brexit Party would win in Peterborough. After all, the Lib Dem surge in the European elections just a week or so before, whatever happened to that, disappeared in Peterborough. The Green Party surge in the European elections, whatever happened to that in Peterborough? No sign whatsoever of that. And the juggernaut of Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party's simple message of implement the Brexit referendum decision, I thought, in a place like Peterborough, which voted 61% to leave in the Brexit referendum, I thought this was an apple that would be bound to fall into the lap of Mr. Farage. Why didn't it? Well, of course, we'll all have a point of view on that. I merely proffer two pieces of advice to Mr. Farage. The first is you've got to get off the hook of people believing that you intend to sell the National Health Service to your friend Donald J. Trump. I know that that's not really true. I know that nobody could sell our health service to anybody unless we agreed to it, and we will never agree to it, so it's a non sequitur. But it's believed, and perception is so important in politics. It is believed that you, Mr. Farage, don't believe in the National Health Service, and therefore, if you gained political power, might well give it away, sell it to your friends in the United States. You've got to get off that hook. And secondly, the next time you're fighting a by-election in a Labour-held constituency, don't pick as your candidate a multi-millionaire Tory with a capital T. That's not good politics. It was a mistake, and it was you who made it, because it's you who makes all the decisions in the Brexit Party. That's my initial reflections on the Peterborough result. On Twitter, you can let me know exactly what you think. We will be making a special Twitter handle, of course, for the Mother of All Talkshows Unleashed, but for the moment, you can let me know what you think through my own Twitter, at George Galloway. Now, what else has been happening? Well, given the hour and your need to get out for dinner, for a change, on a Friday night, I'm only going to deal with one. And that is the utter disgrace, scandal of this week's D-Day 75 commemorations. I am second to none in my respect for, my admiration of, my love towards those who made that hazardous crossing of the English Channel on the 6th of June 1944 under enemy fire, and who landed bathed in the blood of their comrades on the beaches of Normandy and began the liberation of the western part of Europe. Trust me on that. But the pound shop emporium of politicians who organized the 75th, very auspicious anniversary, decided to use this sacred commemoration to deliver yet another insult to Russia and, in fact, also to China. Do you know that China lost 20 million people in the Second World War and that they were on our side? Yeah, I know that some of you did not. Did you know that the then Soviet Union lost 27 million people in the Second World War, and they were obviously on our side? Did you know that the peoples of the Soviet Union made the greatest sacrifice of any country, and that together with China, they knock all losses in all other countries into a cocked hat? Did you know that? Yet China and Russia were not invited to the commemoration. But guess what? The Germans came. In fact, I saw a picture of Her Majesty the Queen, by the way, the last surviving head of state who served in the Second World War, and she did serve. Her Majesty being presented to a line of representatives of, this is the BBC of the Allies who participated in the D-Day Normandy landings. Well, I suppose Germany did participate, in our manner of speaking. It was the Germans we were fighting. It was the Germans who were killing our men as they got off the landing craft. But Germany is in the receiving line, participating in the commemoration, and Russia and China are not. This is an absolute scandal for which the politicians responsible should be held responsible, but probably will not. Well, there are many, many other subjects I could discuss tonight, but I don't have time because I need to go, and I want you to be able to have a night off. Don't forget to watch Ahed Tamimi, the Palestinian icon, on Saturday on Sputnik, on Sky 511, on RT. Don't forget that. It's a very, very important program. Now, I close as I started by telling you what next. What next is the mother of all talk shows that you have known and loved since 2005 is back. It's back, actually much more akin to what it was like on TalkSport than what it was like on Talk Radio, because Talk Radio was early in the evening, a bit staid, a bit, well, buttoned up. Unleashed is unbuttoned. It'll be like the old TalkSport mother of all talk shows. It'll be every Sunday from 7 p.m. on Sputnik FM in the United States of America, on Sputnik.com, on the internet worldwide, and streamed live here. I hope you'll be joining us You'll be tweeting us. You'll be emailing us. You'll be texting us. But above all, you'll be calling us. Because the phone-in element to the Mother of All Talk Shows is absolutely vital. It's the life's blood of the show. And you'll be able to call in, I hope, entirely free. But if not, certainly no more expensively than you were calling in the Old Talk Radio show. So phone calls, messages, characters, professors, legends, me, you, we're back. Larger than life, larger than ever. I look forward to seeing you, to hearing from you on Sunday, the 15th of June, or as advised. So stay tuned. Stay tuned here. Stay tuned on my Facebook. Stay tuned on my Twitter, on my Instagram, on my Snapchat. Stay tuned to know the launch particulars of the Sputnik into orbit with the Mother of All Talk Shows. Thank you for your support. I look forward to continuing to educate and to inform and to entertain you on the University of the Airwaves. And guess what? There's still no tuition fees. How good is that? See you then.
He's the most tip-top